So today I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming election, the primaries in New York, and the multi-state primary that's going to be coming up next week on the 26th. And I want to compare them to what's been happening the past 2 weeks with the states that have not held primaries, but have had conventions where people, the rank and file voters, were not invited and disenfranchised. Lately, we've been seeing in the news people like Rance Priebus telling us that nobody really cares, that it's all a bunch of sour grapes and it's Donald Trump stomping his feet, holding his breath. But I got to tell you, that's a bunch of bullshit. That is not true at all. People do care. And it is a reflection on the GOP and the hierarchy of the party that is controlling this process, and they're trying to manipulate it and they're trying to steer it the way that they want it to go, and they want to steer Donald Trump right off the road. It's evident that they're doing this. And for those that say he didn't understand the rules, Donald Trump didn't come prepared to Wyoming and to Colorado. He didn't have his ground game set up, and Ted Cruz was set up better. Whatever. Blah, blah, blah. I've heard that shit before. It doesn't impress me. The plain and simple fact, the irrefutable truth, is that when people vote, they vote a lot differently than when the party votes. Now, you could hide behind your rules. Doesn't mean your rules are right. Your rules suck. Any kind of rules that can take away the vote from the regular people and give them just to the party bosses and the higher-ups and the delegates, that's a rotten system. And what we've learned in this election cycle from both parties, from both Democrat and Republican, what we've learned is that our system for choosing our candidates is rotten to the core. It is a diseased, cancerous system, and really we got to just start all over. There's no reason why we shouldn't have 50 state primaries. There's no reason why we shouldn't have one person, one vote in every state in this country. The party will say, well, each state decides their own. Nah, the party can make rules, and the party can impose rules upon the states if they want to. And if they really wanted to, they could reform this system. The caucus system is ridiculous, and what we've seen in Wyoming and Colorado is beyond ridiculous. It's criminal. It's conspiracy. It's just disgusting that they've been able to get away with this throughout this entire election cycle. And also, what's driving me nuts, and it should be pissing you off if you're a Trump supporter, is that in states where Trump already won the vote, they're now having conventions after the fact, and they're re-awarding delegates that Trump won to Cruz. How is that possible? How is it possible that Trump won the vote in Georgia, and now Cruz is going to walk away with more delegates from Georgia? How does that make sense? Oh, it's the rules. It's the rules. We can just do whatever we want kind of rules, right? We can make it up as we go along. These are your rules. Your rules suck. And your party sucks. And it needs to be reformed from the top down, starting with Donald Trump getting elected as president. And from that point, we need to purge the party of all the people who have fucked us up for the past few years and have really screwed us over this election cycle. I'm going to read off a list of names that I personally think are an enemies list to the average GOP voter. I'm going to tell you why. Okay, first of all, Scott Walker, sore loser. He was supposed to be one of the front runners, got his ass kicked early, looked foolish, had no chance. Now all of a sudden he's backing Cruz. Scott Walker is a typical GOP regular party guy, and I'm not impressed with him. Jeb Bush. Need I say more? He's Jeb Bush. He's the guy they tried to shove down our throats right at the beginning of this process and convince us that he was going to be the presumptive candidate. He was a guy that we had to accept, like it or not, until Trump came along and really screwed up his shit. I'm not impressed with Jeb Bush. If they were trying to resurrect this guy at the convention, it's going to be a shame. Rance Priebus, you have got to go, dude. You've got to be removed as chairman of the party. You have got to go. You do not respect the wishes of the rank and file voters. You don't care about us. You just want to do what the small group of guys in the back rooms have decided. Carly Fiorino, not impressed with you either. Sorry, you're an opportunist. You ran right over the Cruz, and supposedly it was stated in news reports that his super PACs gave money to your super PACs after you endorsed them. Jockeying for a VP position much? I think so. Rick Perry. I know people love him in Texas, but I don't really give a shit about him. Nikki Haley. God, your state completely ignored you when you told them not to vote for Trump. Need I say more? Lindsey Graham. Oh man, you are a perfect example of the old guard. You are old GOP, and you were one of the first ones. You've got to go, dude. You've got to go. Mark Levin, I'm so sick of you. Shut your mouth already. All you do is go on your radio show and you scream as loud as you can. You shout down anybody. You bully anybody. You make no sense most of the time. And I'm just sick of you. I mean, I used to take you moderately up to a point until I got tired of your voice, but now I can't listen to you at all. You're one of the never Trumps? Fuck you, dude. Marco Rubio. Sorry, man, you're a sore loser. You are a sore loser. One of the biggies on the enemies list, Megyn Kelly. Sorry. Megyn, I don't know what you were thinking when you went after Donald Trump that way. First question in the first debate, to go right after him and try and label him a misogynist. And the problem with that is you didn't do your research. Now, if the only ammunition that you brought that day was his tweets with Rosie O'Donnell, you're a sad excuse for a journalist. You didn't do your research. This is a man who's been in business his entire adult life. He's employed thousands of people, thousands of women. It's been stated and noted repeatedly, there are more women in high positions in his organization than there are men, and women on average get paid more than men do in his organization. So if you really did your research, you would have came up with a few people who claimed that he was abusive in the workplace, that they were sexually harassed, they were passed over for promotion. You have no real world examples other than a few nasty tweets with a person like Rosie O'Donnell who likes to fight with people. That was the best you had, and you tried to throw a knee to the balls from the first strike thrown. That pissed off not only Trump, all his supporters, and it's hurt Fox News in a bad way. You may never recover from that. Fox News may never recover from that. Which brings me to my next enemy on the Trump enemies list, Fox News. We always thought of Fox News as being a conservative news station. This is a place that we conservatives could go to get the news that isn't slanted towards the left. We always thought that we got fair and balanced news from Fox News. And you have been so unbalanced and so unfair towards Donald Trump this entire cycle. You've tried to be kingmakers and you've tried to topple him and put up somebody else in his place. And you're still trying. You're still going at it, trying to injure this man instead of just being neutral. How about that? How about not favoring any of the candidates and just presenting the news and letting people make their own opinions? It's sad to say that of all of those debates that took place, the fairest ones were on CNN. They did a better job of being fair to conservative and Republican candidates than Fox News did. All the ones that were hosted by Fox were terrible. You all did a terrible job. Not just Megyn, but Brett Baer and the other guy, I can't remember his fucking name. I'm going to just go over people I think have been friends to Trump and people that have really shown themselves to be extraordinary people and quality thinkers. Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin has been goofed on and humiliated by the left for years, ever since the last election cycle. And Sarah Palin is a good conservative, and she's a good Republican, and she's a good American, and she made a good choice in backing Donald Trump. Chris Christie. It's strange that at the beginning of this cycle, I didn't like Chris Christie. I always thought that he was an abrasive, unlikable guy. But as the campaign progressed, when he had that moment in the debate where he completely unmasked Rubio for having nothing other than pre-recorded talking points, it was genius. Unfortunately, it was a kamikaze attack because he had to sink himself when he sunk Rubio. He never really recovered, and he dropped out shortly after that. But Chris Christie is a really intelligent guy. He is a great Republican. He's a great conservative. He made a good choice by backing Donald Trump. And I think if Trump gets elected, Chris Christie would make a great attorney general. We need somebody in there who's going to undo all the lawlessness of the past 2 terms of the Obama administration. Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity has been a great guy throughout this whole election cycle. He's been neutral, and he's been fair, and he has given everybody a fair chance on his show, and he has not been one to attack Donald Trump and take cheap shots and try to play the same game that the rest of Fox News is playing. Personally, I think that Hannity is a Trump supporter. I think a lot of people have realized that by now. But he is still being as fair as he can to all the other candidates and giving them equal time and not fucking with them the way that people have fucked with Donald Trump. Bill O'Reilly, I think Bill O'Reilly has been a good guy also throughout this. I think that he has not played favorites. I still don't know who he is endorsing. I think he might be endorsing Trump. Not 100% sure, but I think Bill O'Reilly has been one of the good guys in this cycle. I think Geraldo Rivera has been a good guy. He usually leans to the left a little bit. He's a little whiny sometimes, but he's been pretty good to Donald Trump, I think. Rudy Giuliani, one of the good guys, one of the great guys. Former mayor of New York. He's endorsed Trump, and he's another guy who would make a great attorney general, maybe even a great vice president. Pat Buchanan. Pat Buchanan, he's been right on top of this. He's definitely opposed to the party hierarchy. He's one of those who sees that the GOP is corrupt from the top down and it needs to be reinvented, and he's a Trump supporter. Joe Arpaio. I mean, you got to love Sheriff Joe, right? Does anybody do the right thing better than him? So, that's just my opinion on who I think the good guys and the bad guys are. But really, in a more direct sense, the GOP is really, really screwed up right now. Needs to be reinvented from the top down. Just like Reagan came along, and the GOP hierarchy hated him, and they tried to screw up his campaign, and they tried to prevent him from getting elected. They didn't want him. And now we look back at Ronald Reagan as being a quintessential Republican. He reinvented the GOP. That's what the GOP needs now. It needs to be brought back to its core values. It needs to be reinvented. We need to get rid of this corruption. We need to get rid of the system that takes votes away from people. We need to get rid of the system that can reshuffle delegates after a state has already voted. We need to get back down to a very basic system of one person, one vote. So again, for all of you who are going to say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, he's just crying, he doesn't understand the rules. Okay, whatever. I'm going to repeat again, your rules suck. Your rules are there to favor the GOP bosses. And when we, the people, vote on the 19th, tomorrow here in New York, and the 26th next week in, where is it? Pennsylvania, Maryland, Connecticut, Delaware, and Rhode Island, Trump is going to run the board. He's going to get most of the delegates, if not all the delegates, from all of those states. And you could stick that in your pipe and smoke it, because that's what happens when the people vote.